Hi, I'm Danielle Bassoni with Time for Change Kitchen. Today we are going to make a gorgeous, rich, delicious vegetable broth that will stand on its own. This is a wonderful broth to use for making soups and sauces, so this is a very handy recipe to know. I have adapted this recipe from a gentleman I found online, Andy Baragani, who is the food editor for Bon Appetit magazine. This recipe has gone through many incarnations over the world. It's been used in Japan for vegetable stocks for a very long time, and I really like his version. However, I'm adapting it to make it a little more healthy and to remove some of the ingredients that I feel are not so healthy. I have my own ideas of how a soup should look and taste, and so I'm incorporating them in this recipe. We are going to eliminate the oil, and we are going to change a few other ingredients just a little bit. I have my oven preheating on 300 degrees, and we'll get started chopping these vegetables. We're using celery, onion, and carrot in this recipe, as well as some garlic, roasted garlic. And so to get started, we're just going to cut these into maybe 1/8 inch thick slices. I think he likes to cut them a little thinner, but I like to preserve the integrity of the vegetable. I don't want it to cook down too much. And I'll explain that as we go. By the way, I had this chopping board made for me from a mom and pop organization at my farmer's market. They just create wonderful chopping boards, and I had this one specifically made for my purposes, and I absolutely love it. And if you're interested in this and want to have one made for yourself, just go to my website at timeforchangekitchen.com, and I have their information. And I receive no monies from that, so I'm not. My only interest is letting you know where you can find a really good chopping board. And that I want to see this family do well. They work very hard and are very good at what they do. I buy these bowls at, these are small pasta bowls, and I get them at, you can get them at Walmart, or you can get them at Bed Bath & Beyond. I'm using 2 stalks of celery and 3 rather slim pieces of carrot, which is why I'm using 3 of those instead of 2. These have been peeled. You don't necessarily have to peel them, but I like to. Okay. Now for the onion, we're going to save the onion skin, and we're going to add it later. I'm not going to roast it with the rest of the ingredients. And I'll give you a reason for this later. I like to save pieces like this for another type of stock that I make. And I'll just set that aside. I also have my skin set aside. And I'll take this piece and set it aside as well. And I'll show you how to make that stock soon. So I just julienne these into not real tiny thin strips, but maybe 1/8 of an inch. It's handy to have several of these bowls on hand in case you want to keep your vegetables separate, or if you're cooking a great deal of vegetables. Okay. Now we'll take this garlic and we'll just cut it in half. Just like that. And we will place it face down on this cookie sheet. And that way we won't need oil with it. Boy, my eyes are starting to appreciate this onion. Okay, so we have a baking sheet that we've put parchment paper on it. And I do that just to prevent aluminum getting into the vegetables. And we'll take all of these and we'll separate them as much as possible. And I do have clean hands. Always wash your hands before dealing with food. And we'll put them in a 300 degree oven, which has reached that already, for about an hour. And every 15 minutes or so, we're going to get our tongs and turn these vegetables so that they don't scorch. That's the secret to roasting vegetables without oil. And you can't roast everything without oil or without some sort of processing, like putting breadcrumbs or something like that on it. But you want to do it as much as possible, not use oil. Eggplants are difficult to roast without coating them in something first. Okay, we have these pulled apart for the most part. And as they cook, we can pull them apart more. Okay, so we'll spread these out. And they'll go into the oven now. Okay, our oven is preheated to 300 degrees, and we are just going to set these inside. And in 15 minutes, we'll turn them. Okay, this has been going for 15 minutes. I'm going to set this timer for another 15 minutes. And you can see that they're starting to get a little brown on the tips. And we want to cover them with some of the other vegetables to prevent any of this from scorching. And turn them. The vegetables are releasing their juices, and that has to happen before they start becoming very, very sweet and becoming caramelized. It looks pretty good. Break them up. I'm sort of stacking them a little to protect some of these edges, because we do not want them scorched. Okay, so we'll put them back in. This is doing fine. We'll put them back in and cook them for another 15 minutes. Okay. Okay, so it's been another 15 minutes, 30 minutes total, and we're going to pull this out. And you can see we're developing caramelization on the edge of the parchment paper. And we're going to flip these over. Let me turn this off. We want to prevent these from scorching. Let's see what these look like. Oops. No, that's okay. It's still covered. I can take that off. I'll slip this back into here then. Cover them up a little bit. Okay. So we'll put them back in for another 15 minutes. I'm going to cover that one up a little more. We'll reach a point where we can't do this any longer. What I don't want is for these edges to scorch, because once you have scorched flavor in your vegetables, they're no longer any good. Okay, this is our third stirring of these vegetables. And see, it's not necessary at all to use oil. I'll pick out this piece because I do not want a charred flavor in there. And this is basically a mirepoix, except that we're going to allow it to caramelize. With a mirepoix, you chop your vegetables, cook them at a very low temperature to bring out the sweetness, but you don't allow it to become caramel colored at all. And we are going to cook this until they develop a nice caramel color. Look at that one. That one's doing well. I'm not going to mess with the other one. So I'll push this back in, and we'll go for another 15 minutes. And we may have to go longer. We'll just sit and play it by ear. Okay, while the vegetables are roasting in the oven, I want to talk to you about some of the other ingredients that we're going to use. We're going to use a teaspoon of black peppercorns. And while Andy Baragani likes to roast his shiitake mushrooms and his miso in the roasted vegetable with the vegetables, and he also mixes oil with that, I prefer to use no oil. And I honestly don't see any reason to roast shiitake mushrooms because they are already concentrated in flavor from drying them. And so we will add that to the stock. I'm using sliced shiitakes only because this is what I have on hand. But you can use whole shiitakes. I think 5 is the amount he recommends, and this is about right. And as far as the miso, I prefer to add it at the end, and I'll explain that to you a little later. And the onion skins I also prefer to add at the end, because when you cook onion skins for a long time in with your broth, it can make your broth taste bitter. So if you add them at the last 5 minutes of cooking, then you get the color without the potential bitterness. I'm sure it doesn't always happen, but it does happen. And another thing that I've done a little differently is that I do not use kombu, which is another name for that is kelp. And the reason I don't use kombu is that it's very high in iodine. 2 ounces of kombu is 5 years worth of iodine for an adult. And so that's way too much iodine to be feeding your family. And so I use sea vegetables that have the flavor without the potential harm of too much iodine. And you can go to my website, and there are videos about the health products of different things that I've discussed in this video that link to nutritionfacts.org, which is run by Dr. Michael Greger, who's very well respected in the plant-based community as a nutrition researcher. And so that's where I got this information, and I trust him completely. So this is what dulse looks like. This is a very nice sea vegetable. And we're going to use this simply because it's the one I have open. And it does not have too much iodine in it. And here's another one that you can use, wakame. It's a very nice sea vegetable. It's a good idea to start using sea vegetables because they have wonderful textures and flavors. And another one is sushi sheets, sushi nori sheets. And you can just take one sheet and use in this. And I use this at the very end along with the onion skins because it will disintegrate into the broth, and I don't want to do that. Some of these others you can cook a little longer if you like, but I prefer to just cook them in the last 5 minutes to impart their flavor but not overwhelm the broth. The shiitake mushrooms give the broth this wonderful, almost meaty flavor, and it adds a rich depth of flavor that you can't get with hardly anything else. The miso I use, and miso is a wonderful product. I use organic misos. This particular one is called Hikari miso, and I use the mild white miso. And here's another one made from Master Miso, which is called mellow white miso. All white misos are mellow, so but these are very good products. We'll be back when the vegetables have finished cooking, and I'll show you what to do next. Okay, it's been an hour now. We've turned it 3 times, and this is the 4th time, and I'm just going to check and make sure it's done. It's really starting to caramelize, and I think that we're going to give it another 15 minutes. We certainly don't want it to scorch, but the more caramel flavor we have, the better. Okay, that looks good. It looks really good. All right, this has been an hour and 15 minutes. And this has developed a nice color. And I think that we are going to stop now and make our broth. I'm going to taste these and see if they're too scorched. They're sweet, but there is a little aftertaste of scorch, so I'm going to pull that off of there. And we're going to go ahead and make our broth now. And turn the oven off. Okay, so we've transferred these vegetables over here. And I'll just pick them up. And move them to this pan. And there's some caramelization that's very nice flavored here, but I don't like to add that to the pan because it's sitting right on aluminum, and I just soon protect my brain. And so we are going to add 4 cups of water. And that just covers it, which is nice. And then we're going to add another 4 cups of water. So as opposed to a gallon of water, I'm using a half gallon. This is a quart, right? So I'm using a half gallon of water. And we're going to cook this until these, you see how nice these garlics have turned out. We can just go ahead and release these from here. These are beautiful. I don't think these garlic skins will particularly hurt it, but I just like to be on the safe side. These are very aromatic. I wish you could smell this because it smells wonderful. So another thing I'm going to do is add another 2 cups because these vegetables will retain some of this water. And I want to have at least 2 quarts of stock. And so we'll move this to my stovetop, and we'll cook this until these are all soft and translucent, the vegetables. We've now moved our our broth to the stovetop, and we are going to turn this on high until we get a nice little simmer, and then we're going to turn it down and cook it until these vegetables are completely translucent and have released their flavor. I don't feel that you have to add a gallon of water and then cook it down in order to have a flavorful broth. I think you should use enough water to cover your vegetables and to have a reasonable amount of broth left over. To me, when you cook a broth, when you cook vegetables too long, they take on the flavor of old food. Vegetables that have been heated and reheated time and time again, and I don't think that's particularly good. I cook them just long enough for them to release their color and their flavor, and you can see already that this broth is turning a nice golden color. But we do need to cook it a bit because these vegetables need to be soft, but not overcooked. The broth has come to a slow boil, and I want to turn it down and just let it simmer softly. And as you can see, these vegetables are very close to being done. It took about 15 minutes to come to a boil, and during all this time, it's been cooking. And so we're reaching a point where these are quite translucent, and I think maybe in another 5 minutes they'll be done, and you can see that the broth has taken on a gorgeous color. And so now I think I'm going to go ahead and add the wakame. Oh, I'm sorry, this is dulse that I decided to use. So we're using the dulse seaweed, and with the dulse and the shiitake mushrooms and the miso, that gives you your savory part of this meal, of this broth, and the onions and the carrots give it, and the celery give it its sweetness. So this is both sweet and savory. So we'll add the onion peels, and we're going to cook this for no more than 5 minutes. Okay, so it's been 5 minutes, and I'm going to turn this off now, and you can just see how beautiful this is. It's really a nice dark rich color, very much like a beef stock. And I am going to now transfer this to a clean bowl, a heat-proof bowl. And one of the things I did was put this bowl in the microwave for a minute to make sure it was not, wasn't pouring into a cold bowl. So we want to press a little bit of the liquid out of here, not too much, because we do not want to press the solids, because that makes it too cloudy and dense. We want a very nice clear vegetable stock. Okay, so we have this beautiful clear stock, or rather broth. Isn't that gorgeous? And so now we have to make a decision as to when to add the miso. As for myself, if I was freezing this stock, I would wait and wait and add miso when I was ready to use it, because frankly I don't know how well miso freezes, and I do like to keep broth in the freezer. I keep saying stock, but I mean broth in the freezer, so that I can just pull it out and use it whenever I need it. But I plan to use this today with a wonderful Tuscan soup that I've created. And so I'm going to go ahead and add the miso to it now. What I like to do is take a little, isn't that gorgeous? That's just the most beautiful broth, and it will rival any meat broth that you would ever come across. So I like to add a little of it to the miso. So I'd like to get a little paste going before I add it to this beautiful broth, so that I can make sure all the lumps are gone. It would be a shame to make a lumpy broth after all of this effort. Okay, so now I'll just stir this in. Now this will give you a more cloudy broth, but it is a broth just jam-packed with flavor. Miso contains a great deal of salt, and so therefore when I make this soup, I will not need to add salt to it. And there has been some research that suggests that when you have salt in miso, the soy in it counteracts the negative effects of the salt. So it isn't the same as adding salt to your meal. It does not apparently cause endothelial damage like salt will. So there's a wonderful video of Michael Greger's on my website, and you can find that at timeforchangekitchen.com. And I'm going to taste this. Oh my goodness. This is absolutely delicious. Now this can be used as a wonderful broth base for French onion soup, for the gorgeous Tuscan soup that I'm making today, Vietnamese pho, many Asian soups, and it's just a gorgeous broth that you can use for braising vegetables or anything that you need a good broth for. I also use it for making seitan as a meat substitute. I'm going to take this off the stove now, and we are done. I'm Danielle Bassoni, serving up whole foods for whole health.